All right, welcome to another edition of the Edlow podcast. Subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, I don't even know what you're doing with your life. So you need to subscribe to my podcast because this, I think, is one of the most exciting podcasts I've done. I have Tom Arnold here. Tom, thanks for coming on the podcast. I've been a huge fan for a long time.
Thank you, buddy. Good to be here. Good to finally figure out how to log on here. As you can see, there's chaos. There's chaos in the Arnold house this morning. Kids are running around, but I'm really happy to be here with you.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, as a father, I have 4 kids. They're a little bit older than yours, 17, 15, 12, and 10, and I understand the chaos.
Yeah, it's fun though. It's the best game in town. You know,
it is.
And I love it.
Well, and the thing that's cool about that, I mean, I'll tell you, I know your kids are 10 and 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think personally, this time of my life as a father is my favorite, you know, because especially my son is a senior and my daughter is a freshman, and like they're becoming, you get a chance to start seeing the people they're going to become, and it's exciting and terrifying.
Yeah. I feel kids in general come to us fully formed, and it's our job to not only protect them, but to figure out who they are and help them become that person. Like, you know, when my son was born, I thought, well, he's just like me. He thinks like me. He does the same stuff I do, and that's just not true. And you know, sometimes, and especially with my daughter, it's just been a lot of fun figuring out who she is and what, you know, her sense of humor or her feelings or what she likes to do and why she does it. You know, as you know, our kids are different than each other. Most families have a kid that's this way and then another kid this way. By the way, she painted my nails. We do once a month. We do dad-daughter day, dad-daughter night, and then also father-son. It's a good chance when they're together all the time. You know, we get close quarters over here to have one day where you just have one of them and you say yes to everything. And, you know, I picked her up at school Friday. She wanted to do nails. My toenails are done. I kind of like it. I like it because when she's not here, I think of her. And people ask me about my nails, and then I get to talk about my daughter. So I like that part a lot. You know, I know you said that now where you are is your favorite time. You know, I'm quite a bit older than you. And I remember, first of all, when I got divorced 7 years ago from the mom, my lawyer says, well, what do you want? And I said, well, I want the kids half the time. And he's like, no, you don't. No, you want them when they're like 7 and they're fun. I go, no, I want today. Because since I've been doing everything, and I can continue to do that. And, you know, I've enjoyed it. I kind of miss the baby part. I have to be honest, because when they're babies, they were right here, like 4 months, 6 months. You could do everything right here in your hand. Give them a bath, feed them, they go to sleep. They weren't running away from you, you know. And when we do see babies, sometimes I'll be out with my daughter, and she'll say, Daddy, can we get a baby? And I'll say, well, you know, I promise you this, if we're driving down the street and we see someone who doesn't want a baby, we will adopt that baby. But otherwise, and she's aware I haven't had a date in 6.5 years. So not a lot of baby, you know, but I do understand why people want that.
Yeah, man, you know, it's funny because the thing about, I've said this on my podcast before, the thing that's so weird about being a dad is that you're not really like a dad of one person. Like they're a baby, then they're a toddler, then they're a little, you know, and every stage you don't really notice the transitions, and then you never really get a chance to say goodbye to the one you loved before, but you got this new person that you got to get used to. And I love what you said about the daddy-daughter dates. I try to do that once a quarter with all my kids. And it's funny because my son, like my 10-year-old son, you know, we're here in Sacramento. We got season tickets to the Kings, so we go to all the Kings games. That's our father-son's thing, right?
That's good.
But my daughter, like I took her out. Her birthday was just this last weekend, so I took her out last night, and she just is so hard. Like she just is like, you know, she's 15, right? She doesn't really want to hang out with her dad.
Yeah.
So I'm like, so what do you want to do? I don't know. And you get one word answers. But the crazy thing is by the end of the night, she's getting used to it. She opens up. I couldn't get her to stop talking.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And like to the point where we're driving home and it's like 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, can you just be silent for a minute? You know? And
yeah. My daughter will say that to me. Dad, can you not talk? Or she's really good. You know, she's 7, she'll be 8 next month. She's really good about, Daddy, I need you. And just when she needs me to do something, she'll say that. And then she's also good about saying, Daddy, I need privacy. Which I like, because then I put out my best effort. And what she wants is privacy, so I could go read or whatever. But I played the game with her. And, you know, it seems a little more complicated than her brother. People said to me, hey, you know, wait till they're 7, wait till they're teenagers. And you know, and I was like, I don't know where I'll be when they're teenagers. You know, I'm old. They said, well, the worst part is teenagers will hate you, your own teenagers. And I'll be so old, I won't notice it. Like, I think I'll miss that part. So, you know, you take it a day at a time like everything else. And, but you got to pay attention because you assume things. And kids are not a monolith. And these 2 kids of mine have different personalities. They like different things. They communicate different. If my daughter says, Daddy, I want to play a new game with you, she's really thought that game out. It might be some improvisational game that we're going to play with a version of Freeze, but then all this other stuff. Like, she's thought it out. She came in the other day and said, would you come into my room? I want to play a game. But I came in there and her dolls were lined up, and she was the teacher, and she had the board and what they were studying. I was the parent volunteer, which I just done that day at her school. So I think she saw that. She decided that she really liked her teacher. She lined the different kids up and told me their names, and I remembered some of them. And one was misbehaving, and in the middle of me reading a book to them, she said, keep reading, and took him to the hall to talk to him. Like she, you know, the meticulous stuff that she, you know, notices, or, you know, so it's really fun. It's not like, with my son, he's like, will you watch me play video games? I go, okay. That sounds fun. I will do it sometimes, but he also does the thing, you know, he has his video monitor here. You know, he's 10 and he's very good at Fortnite. Him and his buddies, they all are on there. And they're shit talking each other too. And I hear that, and I go in there and go, guys, if you talk like that outside of your house, at school, in public, you'll have no friends. Yeah. You take that down a little bit. And then he'll do a thing when I walk in. He goes, no, I'm always friends. Don't say anything. And then he'll come in the kitchen later and go, would you come in here and say hello to my friends? You know, that you want it both ways, but you're Tom Arnold, and now I'd like you to do your work. So I find all that very amusing. It's
so funny because your son's the 10-year-old.
Yeah.
So my son's 10, same deal. He plays Fortnite, Apex Legends, all these games, and he is talking so much trash to people he doesn't even know. You know what I mean? And I'm like, you talk to somebody like that in person, you're going to get punched in the mouth. Kid.
Yeah. You know? Well, it's happened. You know, my son is very big too. Mm-hmm. He is a head taller. I'm trying to get his football picture to show you. It's crazy how much bigger he is. And fortunately, he did play football this year. But you know, he said, I want to play quarterback this year. And I go, buddy, you're not built like a quarterback anymore. And your best friend is quarterback, and he's amazing. I said, yeah, you know, I think you should consider doing whatever the coach asks you to do. And it was funny because his mom, who drops the ball, had missed a tryout. And so I got him and I said, I'm going to go to practice with him and see what happens. And the coach saw me and Jax walking up and looked at Jax and said, he's on the team. Anyway, Jax, number 33. Can you see this?
Oh, yeah.
I don't.
It bounced around there.
Yeah, kid pictures. Let me do this right. Anyway, you see, if you saw this guy, you go, yeah, that kid's going to be offensive line. There's no doubt about it. But he's had fun. he's taken to it, and you know, his little buddy is a very good quarterback, the coach's son, of course, because he spent a lot of time with him. But you know, it's a wonderful thing, as long as they enjoy it. And there
Oh,
he
geez, is he the one on the very end?
yeah, he is
Oh,
a so he
that
got
guy.
best lineman, best blocker. He wears shoes that are almost as big as mine. I think he wears size 12 meds. You
Jeez.
know, he's a big fourth grader.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. So I sympathize with your son because you can't see it on the video, but I'm 6'7", 285, right?
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's up. You stand out, man. You
yeah,
stand out. And my daughter is the tallest person in her class, and it's not quite as fun.
yeah.
It's not quite as fun. I can tell by, you know, she stands out too, and I can tell, you know.
Yeah, my daughter's the same way. She's blonde hair, blue eye. She's real skinny, but she's tall. And I'm like, oh man, you know, she's 15, so I'm like, this is going to be a problem for me, you know, as a father. And so, but no, she's a good kid, so I'm not, you know, I'm not worried about it.
I don't know if you know my history, but I'm not the only famous Arnold. My sister, there's a documentary series about her called The Queen of Meth.
I've heard, yeah.
Drug dealer in America. And she did great, which we lived with our dad. I'm a single dad. My dad was a single dad. And when she was 14, she said, I don't want any rules, which is what I did too. I said, I want to drink, use drugs, grow my hair, and I know my mom will be able to. She'll give them to us. And that when you're 14, 15, you think that's a good idea. So, but my sister moved into her, she was 14. And almost immediately, my mom made her marry a dude that was 22, a pedophile. You know, she said, "I'm gonna you break up with him, or I'll have him arrested, or you marry him." And when you're 14, you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna marry him." So my mom drove them to Missouri. They got married, and then her life went off the rails because up to that point, she was a very good kid. I'm not comparing this to your daughter, by the
way. Yeah, you are scaring me.
Well, it is scary, the whole thing. But, you know, she went off a little bit, made a good business for herself. The drug. People are like, were you embarrassed that your little sister was a drug dealer? And I say, not when I was doing drugs, I wasn't embarrassed.
Right. Yeah, that's probably convenient.
Yeah, very convenient for all of us. So, you know, I think you and I are certainly smarter than my mother. Her, you know, she was she was alcoholic too. Alcoholics are notoriously sloppy parents.
Mm-hmm.
They do sloppy things. They'll put a kid with a babysitter that's you know, not appropriate. You know, they do a lot of those things, and then as a kid, you grow up and you have to deal with that. You have to deal with it, but and it is important for us to deal with our bullshit from our childhood because we don't want to pass it on. I see some adults that are still in their childhood, and they've got kids. And it's a weird thing because the kids get to, it's weird when your parent is a kid too. And everybody goes through stuff, but I recommend dealing with all your childhood stuff and then having kids.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because you know, you and I are very similar in that, you know, my father, you know, he had some drug issues pretty much all the way through my high school. He's sober now. He's a great guy, 25 years sober.
Over 25 years. That's very, nothing. And I tell guys, the older guys, I've never heard of anybody prouder than a child whose father or mother got sober for long periods of time. You know, I'm sure that a lot of shit went down. There's a lot of wreckage before that, but the pride that I hear from people like you about, yeah, my father did this thing, and because a lot don't. My mom certainly did. So it's a big deal, and congratulations to both of you guys.
Yeah, well, and I want to ask you. So, having now that you're a father, and you participate, you're sober now. You went through drugs, and you had a mother who went through that. How does that inform the way that you parent your children?
Well, you can't, again, totally assume that they're going to be like you. Like I was, on one hand, every dream I ever had has come true. You know, I had big dreams. You know, I worked on the kill floor of a meatpacking plant for 3 years out of high school because I knew if I saved enough money, I could go to the University of Iowa where they had a stage. I could become a famous comedian. Like, that's a pretty crazy dream. And whatever, there were several things. We mentioned 9 Months, the movie. I remember chiseling heads, and which is one of the jobs that the heads go by. It's pretty boring. You have to make your own fun. And Mork and Mindy was on TV back then. I lived in Ottumwa, Iowa. But Mork and Mindy was on TV, and I remember daydreaming that Rob Williams and I were best friends. And I got home that night, and I looked in the mirror and said, "Okay, that is so disappointing. I'm not going to have that daydream again because I will never meet Robin Williams. I got to have more realistic." And then 10 years later, I'm in his house, Robin Williams, up in San Francisco, the night before we start the movie 9 Months, and Hugh Grant's there, Julianne Moore, Jodie Cusack, Jeff Goldblum. And at the end of the dinner, it's just Robin Williams. I sit there, and I said, "Robin, I have been here before." And he's like, "In my house?" I go, "No, this, me, you, best friend." And he's like, "We're not best friends." I go, "I know, but it's pretty close to that dream I had." And so, you know, when people say there's a lot of people out here, my kids go to school in Brentwood. They're like, you see it, dream it, be it, whatever. And a lot of times I think, well, that's too high of a goal. That's but then again, my dreams have, maybe I should have had bigger dreams, but they literally all came true. So it's hard to tell the kids that they can't do whatever they plan on doing. And I will say this about show business. My dad was a great guy. And, you know, when he was 22, I was 4, my sister was 3, and my brother was 1. And, you know, I always considered him a boring dad because he worked at the factory, and then he came home, and sometimes he didn't have enough time to play with us. And I'd say, "You're boring." And then, but when you have your first child, you go, "Oh boy, that guy was amazing." He was young. Yeah. But I remember there were Bob Hope specials on. Bob Hope was a comedian that would go around and do these specials in the 60s and 70s. And he'd go to Vietnam or Korea and entertain the troops or do these other things. He had beautiful women on that he'd make his little jokes that were my dad's style of jokes, you know. And I remember being upstairs and hearing my dad laugh. And I never heard him laugh like that about anything. And I remember in my head, I went, whatever that Bob Hope does, I'm going to do that. And so one of the first things I did in 1988, when I moved out here to write the Roseanne shows, was a Bob Hope special. And we were dressed in leotards or something. He was Robin Hood. I was whatever. And he called my dad, and he signed all these books for my dad. Just a real mensch, you know. And so my dad, the magic of whatever it is we do, on the same TV in the same living room where he used to watch Bob Hope when I was young, now he watched his son and Bob Hope together. So that kind of, you know, that's the kind of magic that maybe my business provides rarely, but it is real. It is real.
Well, and that's the thing I wanted to ask you. You know, because I have kids, and my son's a guitar player. He's a brilliant singer. He's an international honor choirs. I mean, he's really good.
Yeah.
And I'm always curious, when people have achieved their dreams and been successful, what do you think it is about you? What do you have that you think made you successful?
Well, you have to be stupid. Number one, you have to enjoy the bullshit. You got to enjoy the failure. You got to enjoy the, you know, people saying, "Okay, you didn't get this job. There's somebody better." You just got to go, well, you got to enjoy every bit about it, not just getting a job or being successful or whatever. You got to enjoy the minutia of auditioning, getting rejected, whatever. Sleeping on people's couches. When I first left Iowa in '83, I moved to Minneapolis for 5 years because they had comedy clubs. That was my thing. I get on TV as a comedian once, everyone in my hometown will like me, which turns out not to be close to be true. But I would have done anything. We worked for free or $10 a night. Yet I had other jobs because I loved it. I loved it. I watched some of the stuff I did, and it's cringeworthy now. But I loved it. I was so deep. I spent 5 years doing that. wherever I could do it. And again, it would be hard to do it that way now, but you just got to love it. You got to, and you don't have to explain. Like your son's a guitar player. I get that. I would have loved to be a guitar player. I cut the end of my finger off. My dad, I became a drummer. My dad had got a new skill saw downstairs. He said to me and my 4 younger brothers, "Stay the F away from my skill saw. Don't touch my skill saw." And he got in the car, drove off, and I started this skill saw, took a board, first board through, and cut the end of this finger off.
Oh,
and so,
man.
And so I can't touch, up to that point, I was kind of playing guitar. So Dad, he came home and we were having dinner, and I'd wrapped a towel. I didn't want to tell him. It was a big, cloth around it. And Dad's eating dinner. He's like, "Tommy, show me your hand." And he goes, "The other hand." And I held it up, and there was a cloth. And he goes, "Oh, were you in my paint? Because it was all red for blood." And then I'm like, "Okay, Hail Mary." I started crying. And he looked at it. You can see the bone. He goes, "Why wouldn't you tell me so I could take you to the hospital?" I was more concerned with disappointing him going to the hospital. But it also taught me that boys will. I don't have guns. I don't have guns because I have a 10-year-old boy. When I was a 10-year-old boy, my dad would stay the F away from my gun. He had some Korean War rifle, and the gun was over here locked up, and the cartridge over here. And as soon as he got out the door to work, me and my brothers tried to break in every day to get that gun. I finally got it one day and loaded it up, went out in the front of our house, and just started firing it. And I couldn't control myself. And so I see his car swerving down the street, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to get my butt kicked here in a second." But I don't, I don't need to, if you can't kill somebody with a stick, you're no man. So I just don't, my son knows where, he knows everything in his house. I'll say, my dad used to say, I say, "Can I have a little money, Dad?" And he pulls pockets out. "Yeah, I got no money," but he really didn't. And so I do that with my son. You try. "I'm sorry, son, I got no money." He goes, "Actually, Dad, you do. There's a pair of pants hanging in your bedroom on the wall with $48 in the pocket." And at first I think, well, that's bad but now it's good, because if I lose stuff, I go, "Hey, where is?" And we also, interesting, we have 21 cameras outside our house here. We have so the kids and I, and people are like, "Are those for the LA crime?" And I'm like, no, they're for one person. They're for the mother who would break into the house, call the police, say something happened, always in front of the kids, and the cops come, and I go, "Well, what did she say happened?" "Well, let's watch the tape." And then they haul it off. I mean, it's saved by, but now also when we lose stuff, Dad loses stuff. I was in this room and I went over here, and we'll CSI it down. My assistant's very good about cutting together tape for court, of course, but also just to put, our life, figure out what's what and who started the fight. What daughter says he started it. I go, let's do people's court. Let's go watch it. We'll all watch it together. We'll see what really happened. And it's also a good parent tool, because you forget how big you are and how loud you can be. And when I've gotten mad before, looking down at my son especially, I saw that, and it can be scary. And so I say, I don't want to do that, even though, that for a person, he's big, he's huge, but I'm bigger, and I don't want to come off that way, So I just try to be a better parent. Anyway.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. There's so much you just brought up that just resonates with me. One of the things, you talk about how big you are. I mean, I just had a conversation with my second daughter, and it's really funny. It's hard when you have boys and girls, because my son, like you mentioned, how all of your kids are different. My oldest son, I have to really pound it into him to get him to understand. You know what I mean? Like, I really have to go hard.
Yeah.
And it's funny, because for the last couple of years, I've gone hard, and it's just in one ear, out the other. And he's finally starting to get it. My youngest daughter, if I look at her wrong, she crumbles. Right. And being 6'7", I'm an attorney, I'm a litigator, I'm a trial attorney. So, I got to go hard on a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so she one time said to me, she's like, "I don't think you understand how intense you look. Like, even if you're not yelling." And so I've had to adjust with her because she's just so much more sensitive. But it's hard because I tell her, because she's 12, and I go, listen, but your brother, like, I've done this to him, and now he gets it. Now he gets it. I'm like, sure, maybe he's a little traumatized, maybe he's a little dead inside, and maybe he's never going to feel like he's good enough, but he's going to be successful. You know?
Well, my son would do a thing, and I cut the kids a lot of slack because of the stuff they've seen, and only will serve me when the kids are here, and I've literally never taken her to court, never called the cops. The next time we go in, because it's been 7 years, there's something called legal abuse, and I'm loaded for bear with that, because that's all it's been. Dragging me in, you spend all your money, you drag the kids in, it's traumatizing for them. But so I gave him a little bit of a slack, and I remember my son would sit down in the hall and yell, and just right in the hall, you couldn't get by him. He would, take over the house. And then one day I said, you can do that. You can do the yelling, but you're going to do it in your room, because we have a life here. Your sister and I and Fred, we are living life. You can choose to go do that. And I picked him up. I think I can still pick him up. I don't know, 62 to 20. But I picked him up and carried him in there, and then locked the door, and then so he could have his time. But he just couldn't ruin it for the rest. And he quit doing that pretty quickly, because sometimes they do stuff because they want you to correct them or to show them what's right. And if they can get away with, it's just nature. They'll keep trying to get away with, but they want to, know what the boundaries are. Where is the boundary? Where is the guardrail? That's us. Here it is. My guardrail's thicker, longer, perhaps, than some parents, but there is a guardrail, and it's scary if they don't have that.
Yeah, I agree. And I wanted to ask you too, I know that you, a little while back, you had a stroke, which also resulted in you kind of getting your health in order.
It should have been the other way around, of course. But hold on, let me see here. I've got to. Can we pick this up later? Can we pretend to just come back to this?
Yeah,
because I haven't.
All right, we had to take a little break. Mr. Arnold, busy man, and had a lot of stuff to do, so we're back, and glad we're able to reconnect for this. So, what?
I went to the hospital. That's where I went. I had to go to check up on my. I had the big skin cancer thing removed. You get it when you grow up on a farm without, and I've said this before, without sunscreen. When you get older, you'll have to get stuff cut out. It's not life-threatening, but it's a pain in the butt. And so they did something yesterday, and then it swelled up huge, and then I had to run down there real quick. They can open it up, and then I have to go back tomorrow morning. Then they'll sew it, and that's where we are. That's where you grow up in Iowa. That's kind of stuff that happens to you, man.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Growing up in Iowa, I know that you're pretty politically informed. I know you're a big anti-Trump guy, which I am too, which is interesting. Never voted. I mean, I consider. Oh, go ahead.
It's not anti-Trump. It's he's a terrible, terrible person. I've done it for years, and he's the worst person in the country to be president. I mean, he's I never was that. I was always a Democrat or whatever, but with Trump, I mean, it's just I mean, that's how do you feel? How do you?
Well, this is interesting because I'm a conservative who's never voted for him. And the thing is that what I don't understand, I told you off air, and I think I may have on air. My listeners know I'm a member of the church, a member of the Mormon church. And people in Utah love him.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Isn't it weird? I mean, because let me just say this. One of the things I found really interesting. I was younger when Bill Clinton was going through all his Monica Lewinsky stuff, but I remember members of my church saying, well, it's about morality. It's about morality. And so now I look around, I'm like, that guy,
Yeah. It makes you wonder what has happened. Lindsey Graham was one of those people that with Clinton was like, we need to impeach him. We can't have that. It's bad for the country to have somebody that doesn't have morals and whatever. And then to see that the swing now Mitt Romney he's never given up his beliefs. Like he has stood up there, the only guy, and said, "This is what I believe, and you want me to put my hand to God, and I believe he should be impeached." You know, he's done that now. But a lot of people, I think that, and it's you know, I'm Jewish. I think I'm a Reformed Jew. I'm not a Orthodox or hardcore. And I think if people complain about kids, young people being away from the church, and I think this is a great example of why, because what does the church mean? What does Jesus mean? I love Jesus, great Jew, but the way I understand it is he did a lot of great things. Like Jesus would not have been hanging with Donald Trump. He's sort of the money changer guy, and Jesus looked out for everybody. Yeah. So to put that with your politics, that we don't care about immigrants, or we don't care, so it is hard. I do have a lot of friends that are genuine. Arnold Schwarzenegger is a genuine conservative Republican, and because of Trump, I've gotten to know a lot of genuine conservative Republicans, and who are willing to say that Trump is not okay. And when I grew up in Iowa, we had my dad was a Republican, a lot of Republicans in my family. We had a couple great Republican governors. And when we went to school, in high school, we had civics class, and we'd go in, and the debate coach would be like, "Okay, you're the Democrats, you're the Republicans. Let's debate this bill." And then we went up to the university, or to the Iowa State Capitol, and we did it in front of everybody. We showed how to get a bill. You compromise, you do this and that, but that's not even the Trump things. He doesn't even care about. It's definitely not about getting things done. It's about something else, and I assume it's going to be that all those guys are going to go off a cliff with Trump, because it's really. I mean, he's exactly who he's always been. He's always been a terrible person, and it was kind of funny when he was the business guy or the whatever, the TV guy. But these politicians, some of them have had legitimate careers, and they're Christian, and they were this and that, and all of a sudden they go off. There's no, I don't know what it is, but it's funny. I've heard somebody talking about the Antichrist. Now, the Antichrist is a guy that comes in and solves the Middle East problem.
Right.
And the fact that somebody wouldn't go, well, what if Trump is the Antichrist? Like I don't know what Antichrist is exactly, and I don't believe in the rapture. That it doesn't turn out good for Jews. I know they're like, we support Israel, but really, so. Yeah, I mean, that's your beliefs, and I'm sure that you can speak on this. Your beliefs, that you believe in God, a higher power. I do too. I didn't create all this stuff. And I see you look at your kid's eyes. That's still that blood from the thing. You look at kids' eyes. Your kid's eyes. You go, oh yeah, there is something. There's something out there. I see it. It's right. So. I don't. You explain to me tell me how formerly conservative Republicans, Christians, how do they support Donald Trump?
Here's what I hear the most, and I've actually had one on my podcast, just a guy who's a Trump supporter who actually no longer supports Trump because of January 6th, which I respect.
Well, that's a good reason. There you go.
Yeah,
that's a good reason. Yeah,
yeah, but what I typically hear from them is, well, we don't like Donald Trump the man. We like his policies and policy, and me. I go, okay, listen, I understand where you're coming from, but hard for me to believe when 25, 30 years ago you're impeaching Bill Clinton, the person, and on top of that, also, I just kind of go, well, wait a minute, really? Because there is a religious right to the Republican Party, which are all about moral stuff, right? So. If that's and they go gaga for Trump.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that carries a lot of water. And on top of that, me personally, I look, I'll say, like, there was a couple of things that Donald Trump has done that I do agree with some of his ideas on trade. Some stuff he did with China, I was like, yeah, I think that makes sense. I don't think he's a strong conservative. I mean, all those Trump tax cuts without spending cuts doesn't make any sense. It just ballooned the debt more. But I'm more interested. I have a government degree from Sac State, and I'm a lawyer, so I'm more interested in the kind of the process of elections and things. And it's just so interesting to me that it looks like it's gonna be Trump Biden again, which I find so interesting, because the other side of that is I mean, Kamala Harris, who I've met, I find it very interesting that she even brought up that Joe Biden, a lot of these policies that have turned out to be pretty racist, he kind of assisted in. So I don't know how, I don't understand how Republicans square.
Who assisted in those?
What's that?
Who assisted in the racist policies?
Joe Biden.
Are you talking about 30 years ago with the 40 years ago? And Clinton did this too, about the where they put labels on these young people. It wasn't monsters, but it was something. Yeah. It was a label. It was a negative stereotype. And they actually passed legislation, that if you did these certain things, which is all people of color, you'd never get out of prison. I mean,
yeah, and on top of that, also there were, I know there was some times where Joe Biden, for purposes, I'm sure, politically, cozied up to some of the Southern Dixiecrats and things like that. Who
yeah, and the same with Hillary Clinton, and that's kind of I don't know if the Southern Dixiecrat actually hasn't been around for a long time, 60 years.
Sure.
Years, right? Sure. And I know he's old, but I think that Joe Biden has made mistakes in his 50-year career. He said some dumb stuff. He's made mistakes, but you can't, in my opinion, you can't go, oh, remember that one time in 1971 when he did this or said this or was, you have to go, oh, that's the same as Trump then, which is a false equivalence. If you're looking for one thing and everybody's got something ridiculous they've done, and now society has grown, so we can look at that stuff and go, okay. But I think a lot of people on the right spend a lot of time trying to make Joe Biden as bad as Donald Trump. Because then they go, but he's not. He's just not. As a human being, he's a man that lost his wife and child in a car wreck. How do you recover from that? How do you recover from that? It's like they want to judge him his religion, like they did Obama. Obama was a Christian. I mean, how do you? I'm Jewish. If I said another person wasn't Jewish, that said they were Jewish or whatever, that's a sin. That's one of our 600 and so many sins. And I also think, as a human being, to judge other people's whatever, I'm more curious, what you believe in, how that works, and but to me, to judge and say, yeah, we're the good Jews, you're the Democratic, but so it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing to play into. I think Joe Biden says some ridiculous stuff, and I don't know that it's all old age. I have to tell you, he's always had gaffes here or there, but consistently he has found ways to reach across the aisle, as they say, and his best buddies were old school Republicans. Now they've said he's terrible, and and Trump is great, but I think that do I wish he was younger? I don't like it when he rides a bike. I get pissed off. It makes me nervous. Or why is he even walking? Why is he not in a chair? And but he did have to pick. Picking Kamala Harris, there was she's a woman, she's a black woman. He had to do it. He made that promise. And those two people, Kamala and Joe Biden, were the only two people who could have beaten Donald Trump. So when you're me, you look at that like, okay, they saved the world. Whatever that combination was, they saved the world. So I'll always have gratitude about that. You know, she is an easy target. I drive by her house every day on the way to take kids to school. She's, you know, people forget what kind of a senator she was, and she's a prosecutor. In fact, they say she was the one throwing all the black guys in jail, and which is true. That's how they used to, you know. And but to say, you know, their thing is she's an idiot. She has a low IQ. That's just not true. That the evidence, you know.
Yeah.
You
know, well, I'll tell you what, I went through law school. You can't have a low IQ and get through that. I mean, it's tough. Yeah.
But then you see people like Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, who went to Ivy League college and law school, and they pretend that they're not, because they're like, I don't want to seem too smart. Ted Cruz tries to seem smart, but Josh Hawley's like, I want, you know, I'm going to play for this audience where I don't think they're smart enough to handle me being smart. And that's a bad, you know, that's a, you know, you know, Jimmy Carter, Rosalind Carter died yesterday, I believe.
Sure.
You know, I met her in the end of the 70s, and she came to my community college in Iowa. Big deal. And she was a person that, you know, I've interviewed her husband. You know, the things I liked about him, number one, he really was a baseball fan. He was, I believe it was the Braves. And he told me it affected his quality of life. Like, Braves lost a big game. He was not quite himself in the White House, which I respect, because, you know, it's always good to believe it's something greater than yourself. Maybe it's sports teams, maybe it's music, but to go, hey, I'm not the boy. I admire this sort of thing. But his one of her great quotes is that you know, you're there representing people, but you give them what they want, but you also give them. I forget her. She's more eloquent, but basically, you also have to stand up and give them what they think they don't want, if it's better. And you don't see that with. I mean, people are like, they just want to get. It's all about getting votes or getting on TV. And you know, Trump has brought out, you know, Jason Chaffetz, you know, he was a congressman from a Mormon from Utah. And when the Access Hollywood tape first came out, he said publicly, I cannot support Donald Trump. I have a 15-year-old daughter. How can I look her in the eye? Well, he changed his tune. And just like the current Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, in 2015, he made a public statement. Listen, I can't look my 15-year-old son in the eye and support Donald Trump. I just can't do that. Well, you know, when you put your kids in it, when you're like, you know, I mean, and then you go back on it, you know, his policies weren't that good that you would love your soul, you know. And the last thing I say is that the birther stuff, that's 2011. That's when I quit talking to Donald Trump. And he'd been asking me to do the show. And I saw him do the birther stuff, and and people let him get away with it, saying, hey, show me your birth certificate, first black president. If the first Mormon president, if all of a sudden some other guy's like, hey, show me your birth certificate, you guys, everybody would get together, and they'd never even be on TV again. Because that is so. And then the John McCain stuff, which is insane. John was such a hero. He lived in a 5-foot box or 4-foot box for 5.5 years. You know, he wouldn't come home until the other guys got to come home. And then he was able to criticize him for being, I mean, it did take your breath away. And then you're like, okay, that's going to be it. Because the Republican Party will go, okay, we're not that. But there's something and that's it. But once they overlook that, they're like, we might as well overlook everything. You know,
that's shocking.
We forgive. We're Christians, so it's not perfect. But okay, none of us are perfect. But that man shouldn't be the president. And have, you know, you can forgive people. First of all, they got to ask to be forgiven. I mean, that's where I stand. You got to make amends as best you can, ask to be forgiven, and then you see what happens down the line. But you can't do it because I want to keep this job and stuff. I know, I've done many things where especially before I got sober, where it was like, okay, now I need to turn the corner on this, not to get myself better because I deserve it, but to show other people, oh, look at me, I'm sober now, and I can have my job back or my relationship back. And it's just, it's bullshit. It's also bad it was bad for me, because until I decided I'm going to get sober for this guy, he deserves it. It takes a lot of convincing. Then it's not going to work if you're doing it for other people. So here we are. Yeah. You tell me what your thoughts are, buddy.
Well, I just think, I don't know what's going on with the Republican Party, because everything you're saying is true. I mean, I do believe that. I mean, Donald Trump one time said I could go out on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I'll go up in the polls, and he's right. Yeah. I mean, it's really shocking, the things that he will say, and almost people are happy for it. It's almost like we've become an internet troll society, and we just want the person who can give the biggest burn and doesn't care about the other person. Colin, Rosie, whatever. You may not like Rosie O'Donnell. Call her a pig.
I like her a lot. She's adopted kids. She's got a son in the military. She's a very good woman. Very funny comedian too. Put up with all that stuff from him. And you know what's weird? I'm gonna tell you, when I found out Roseanne Barr, my ex-wife, was a Trump supporter, I said, through a message, I said, look what he did to Rosie O'Donnell. You guys were friends. And she goes, I support him because he never called me a big fat pig. Like, that is, that's like, but it's like, when people talk about cults, because you have to have that, you can't have any critical thinking. I watch a lot of documentaries about cults. I'm watching one now called Mother Love or what. I mean, it's just.
Oh, I started watching that. It's nuts.
Yeah. I mean, it's they also did a good job with the fourth God, man God. She's God woman or woman God. Anyway, that guy you got to stay on, because this guy's such a scammer, criminal, and he's so dumb. The way he just puts it out there, and and you watch some of the other people. They're beautiful young women. It seemed like they had kind of things going. And they, and I get it. Sometimes you get life trauma, whatever, you're just looking for something. You're vulnerable. And I think that's what these evangelicals said with Trump, because Trump liked them. First of all, he never liked evangelicals. Michael Cohen, I have it on tape. He said when they came to the Trump Tower to think about supporting him, they wanted to hug him, and he told Mike Cohen, keep these weirdos away from me. I don't want to touch him. But then he realized, there's a lot of these guys are huge scammers. It's all about the money to them too. You'll have good luck in the stock market if you send me. You'll have, and it's the history of this country. It's gone on, And so he's like, I like that. I'm gonna figure out a way, and he's done it. He's monetized, his resentments, and he's got people feeling sorry for him, which is weird. And he'll say and do. That's where those, the people that go to his rallies, because I also thought they're going to get bored, because he just goes to the greatest hits, and he's not even putting himself in there. He doesn't really know where he is. He would never. I've known him 40 years. He would not have anything to do with those people. But again, there's a generation. Every generation has there's a group of white people, and somebody steps up that they consider better than them, and that someone that believes the worst white person is better than the best black guy, right? And they hear this guy, Donald Trump. He speaks like us. He says what we really want to say, and they get behind him 100%. It's happened the whole history of the country. And what happens is that person at the top goes off a cliff. And then all the supporters, they never got more money. They never got health care. They never, and what happens is that generation of white people just does not advance. They fell for it. They sit there. Whereas people of color, women, every generation, they advance a little bit. You know what I mean? This thing, I mean, it used to be Southern Democrats, you know, that did it. And then the parties flipped around. But it's just they're the ones that get screwed the most.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I think that's what he did. He tapped in. And I wanted to ask you because you're from Iowa, and Iowa's a big Trump supporting. I mean, I think they switched from Obama to Trump pretty handedly.
Yeah, I have family that supports him in Iowa.
What's that?
I have family, brothers and sisters that support him. Still,
I'm sure that Thanksgiving with them would be great between you guys.
Well, we did have my stepmother's funeral last in September, and that was sort of like that. But I'm the oldest of 7. I'm the toughest, so you know, you can only convince. And I think people and family like to needle each other, so you know they don't explain why they like Trump, but they might wear a hat over because they know it'll piss me off, and you know it's just like sports fans. You're either an Iowa State fan or you're an Iowa fan. Now, you don't root against Iowa State except when they're playing Iowa because that's like family. But, you know, people have to get motivated to get behind something.
Yeah.
And politics right now is that thing. It's not about.
I actually think, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, that as people leave religion, politics has kind of become the new religion, you know. They follow it just like they do their religion, you know. So that's scary. But I also wanted to ask, you mentioned Roseanne and texting her. Are you guys friendly?
You're in Sacramento, right?
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time up there when Arnold was governor. Had this fun, you know. He had a hotel, the whole floor of the hotel, because he was the state of the governor's. Actually, he has a private plane so you can fly back and forth. And he had the whole floor of, I don't know if it was a Hyatt or what but his gym, his workout thing was the whole floor of this hotel. And it was also great fun having a friend, you know, it's something he dreamed about. And he really did. He really also, when he became governor, I said, there's one guy you got to meet. And I said, this guy, he's got a bad mouth. It's the main Democratic guy. And, but you got to figure out a way. John Burton is his name. I know John Burton a long time. My third ex-wife dad was in the California House, and my ex-wife's a political lobbyist or whatever you call it. But I got to know this John Burton, and he's just amazing. And he's the opposite. He's very liberal, and you know Arnold comes from the other place. But Arnold was smart. They became friends. Like they would swear at each other, but they would also get stuff done. And you know, I think that's a different time now because, you know, I have to say, behind closed doors, even people in Congress, like Eric Swalwell told me, Matt Gaetz, they used to hang out, man, when he first came. He was a pretty cool guy, he said. And then, you know, but on camera, he's got to be a weirdo, or he's got to do this, or he's got to do that. And you know, that's always been that way out there because they're in a small world. But now it's changed, and some of the other senators and Congress people I know say it is, you know, a Ted Kennedy would not be best friends with whoever he was best friends with back in.
Sure, man.
I mean, yeah. So we are. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you. You brought up Roseanne and texting her about the Trump stuff. I mean, were you guys? You know, I know that your divorce seemed pretty. It was pretty out there, and it seemed pretty, you know, out in the public, and it seemed a little nasty. Have you guys been able to kind of mend that a little bit?
Well, you know, people ask me if I'm friends with Roseanne. If we could be friends, we'd be married. I'm not friends with my ex-wife. And men that tell me, oh, I'm still best friends with my ex-wife and I'm remarried to another woman, I go, that's shady. That is shady. My thing is, you know, we met when I was 23. As a comedian in the Midwest. She just started comedy out of Denver. She wasn't famous yet. She's a little older than me, but she was a very good comedian. And she was a mom, and so, which I liked. And she was a feminist. I never heard that. I came from a meatpacking plant. She was the most liberal person, you know, and I learned a lot from her. You know, I was sort of her like bodyguard, the guy for the beef. I'm sure that's what she saw in me. And then I saw this other world from her, and we got married eventually, and it was good for a while. It was great fun, but then it went, you know, as sometimes happens in relationships. And I think that both of us, what I know is, I can't say this in every circumstance, we both tried everything we could. We did. I know she did. She knows I did. And you know, it had to be, you know, we were waiting on each other to file for divorce. And then she said all kinds of, you know, crazy stuff about me, which she, you know, which comes up again with the right wing media when they're doing me. They don't put the week after that, she apologized publicly and said it was her lawyer or whatever. But, you know, there's no reason to be, you know, she immediately got remarried. She, they had a baby, which I'm happy. I'm happy when my ex-wives get married because, man, I don't trust myself. I'll go back with them. But we had not talked except for some jokes back and forth for 18 years. And I did her roast, which is a big deal. She had her Comedy Central roast. I get a call from a guy that's the producer, Joel Gallant. He goes, "Oh, I just butt dialed you, Tom Arnold. You know, I'm doing the Roseanne roast." I go, "Yes, you are." He goes, "I haven't talked to her, so don't. But would you be willing?" I said, "Joel, I would be willing to consider it, but unless you ask me at the last minute." And I said, because if I do agree to this, I want to be good. I don't want last minute scrambling and me not having jokes or, you know, I'd rather just not do it. And so he's like, "Yeah, I get that." And then the week of the roast, it was Saturday. There's a voice message from Roseanne to call her, and which she hadn't left me a voicemail for a long time. And so I called Joel Gallant first. I go, "What's she gonna ask me?" And he goes, "Well, she's gonna ask you to dress up like a waiter, come in the middle of the roast, serve her a drink, and then leave." That I go, and he goes, "That'll be hilarious." I go, "Yeah, that's not funny. People will be." So I don't even address her. I don't do it. The roast. He goes, "No, it's great." I go, "That doesn't work for me." So then the next day, calls him. "Okay, here's the deal. You are part of the roast. You come out, surprise guest. You roast the people on the dais. There's a bunch of great comedians out there, and you roast them. Then you turn to Roseanne and fist bump her or whatever, and then you leave." I go, So I'm coming to the Roseanne roast. I'm Tom Arnold, and I'm not going to roast Roseanne. People will be so mad, and that's ridiculous. You know, I do remember talking to my fourth ex-wife. Again, they were calling. Then they were out offering big money, all this stuff on Thursday. And she did leave me a nice message. And my ex-wife said, I was working out. I said, "I'm not going to even return anybody's calls. My lawyer's calling about." And she goes, "Well, do you want to do the roast?" And I thought about it. I thought, "Yeah, I do." And I said that. She goes, "Well, then you should just do it." She probably, because they're paid a lot of money too. But so Friday, I said, "I will do it." The roast is Saturday. And then my lawyer called. We legally could not be in the same room. We had restraining orders against each other from our divorce. And if she made a comment about my penis, she had to pay me $100,000. The same with her body. So all night Friday night, these lawyers in New York and LA had to rework all of that stuff. And then finally, I get a call Saturday morning. "Okay, it's worked out. You're going to be there." And then I realized I don't have, you know, jokes. I called Jen Kirkman. I go, "I can't believe I'm doing this," after I said I wouldn't do it at the last minute. But we sat there and talked. I realized, well, actually, I do have 18 jokes. One joke per year that we had not been together. And I kind of sketched it out. I go down there, and it was a secret that I was there. Very seldom things on TV are secrets. But I didn't know for sure I was doing it. You know, they had me hidden a trailer. They had the big show here in Hollywood. I was out back. Nobody knew I was there. None of the other comedians. And I also thought she might change her mind. I know her. Like she can say, "Oh, he's down here stalking me. Have him arrested." So I never really believed it was going to happen until the security came up and said, "Okay, we want to walk you up to the backstage that Jane Lynch, who's wonderful, was the MC. She didn't know. And, you know, there'd already been some Tom Arnold jokes, which is something I knew would happen whether I was there or not. And she said, the producer went out and talked to her, and she goes, well, somebody else would like to comment on the evening. Because she really didn't know. And said Tom Arnold. And the audience kind of laughed, another Tom Arnold joke. And then when I walked out, I could feel them. It's a very rare, real moment. Anthony Jeselnik and Amy Schumer were in shock. They're sitting around here at this thing. And I was so nervous, you know, but I just wanted to get in and do my jokes, get out and say something nice, which the roast side, the old Dean Martin roast, you know, those, they trash each other, but then they'd also say something really nice to the person they're honoring. And I genuinely thought about that. I was writing the nice thing I was going to say down before I went there. And I felt myself like a little emotional. And I remember thinking, there's no way I'm going to be, I better get over that because I don't want to be that way on TV. And it was thanking her for you know, an analogy of when she went on Carson, you know, and then she was my Carson. You know, she said that guy's talented, he's funny, and I appreciate that. So as I'm getting ready to leave the stage, I realized I hadn't watched any of the rest of the show. And I know I said she's sitting over here. We haven't even made eye contact. So I thought, what did the other comedians do when they left? Do they give her a high five, whatever? And so I got done. I thought I turned to her and it was all, you can see it. It's like awkward, hey. And then I got backstage and I said, get the mic off. I had to, one of the nice things they gave me was a G4 Gulfstream to fly me from LA to Nashville to shoot my show the next morning, like you know, by myself, which is crazy. But I get the mic off. All of a sudden, she comes backstage, and she's like, "Hey, I just want to tell you how much that meant to me. It's good to bury the hatchet." Like, and then a bunch of paparazzis came around and said, "Oh, let's do a picture." And she said, "No, I have to go to the bathroom first." Now, what I thought, well, she must not want a picture, so I've gone. Get out of there. And I'm on the way to the airport and tell my other ex-wife about it. And she said, did you take a picture with her? I go, no, she didn't want to. I said, if she would have wanted to take a picture, she would have taken it right there. We're both there. She said, you don't know anything about women. She's not going to take a picture with her ex-husband without going and looking at herself in the mirror to make sure she looks great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a little, but you know, then I thought, that's it. I'll talk to her again in 18 years. And then the stuff started. And very, you know, she's all in, man. She's all in. And, you know, but I also, here's what I think, my real opinion. Just her history, she has a history of being all in on people, whether it be her dad, her first husband, second husband, third husband, whoever it is. And then something happens. And then she turns on them and says, you're responsible for ruining this, whatever. It's her way of, then she can move on and go, Jesus, all that stuff with Trump. Yeah, that wasn't my fault. Trump is terrible. Because she used to hate him. She may be the only person that can take Donald Trump down. Trump has a 3-inch penis. I can see her doing the show. You know, whatever it is. But she does have that thing where all of a sudden she goes, oh shit, I need to turn on this person. And you know, hopefully her and Trump will take each other down. I don't know.
Well, I want to ask you, you know, tell me, now that you've kind of buried the hatchet, you know, looking back, I mean, you've had a great career, obviously, and you really got a big break with Roseanne and being on the show, being a writer. So as you look back on all these years, do you know, what has Roseanne meant to you?
Well, I mean, she gave me obviously my big break. You know, also the fact that from the first night we met each other, a guy came out to Denver and saw her. That guy that owned the comedy club said, hey, there's a woman I just saw that you're going to love. You guys are going to be hit it off. I want you guys to work together the whole weekend. And I remember watching her and thinking, "Oh, I've never seen somebody like this, funny, tough, a woman." Uh, um, and then she, the secret, and I say this to women, we know we're good looking as men, but if you tell us we're funny, then you got us forever. And she thought I was funny, and the confirmation that somebody I knew was funny and respected felt the same way about me. That was, that everybody needs that in their career. And then we hung out a lot, we partied a lot, because she had a husband and kids back home, which made it more interesting. And then she said, "I would like you to write some jokes for me. I think that's a good way to, you know." And so I knew her character, so I started writing jokes. And the first time she went on Johnny Carson in 1985, I was back in Minneapolis watching with all my friends, watching my friend Roseanne, and she killed. It's that thing where you ask her to sit down, and immediately you have a career, you have $100 million show, whatever. But she did a couple of jokes I'd written, and I was like, that was very satisfying. Mm-hmm. Like, I like that feeling. I like feeling that my friend killed it, but also that I could learn to do that thing. Because, that was like, okay, maybe I'll be a writer. And then she had an HBO special in 1987. And she said, I want you to come out. I think it might have been the first time I was in LA ever, because I want you to play my husband on we were not a couple. I played my husband on this HBO special. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be on an HBO special. And it was great fun. And then she said, well, 1988, they want to do a show with me, the people that do Cosby Show, and I want you to play my husband. I was like, that seems like, I did some theater, but that seemed like a lot. I remember being a little like, wow, are you because doing the HBO special is easy, one little thing. And I knew that they'd been looking for other people too. So we went in to meet the producers, Carsey Warner, to talk about me being the husband. And I was like, I said, they were having John Goodman come in and some other people. And I said, I'd really, I know your character. I know what you want to do with the show. I think it'd be best if I were the writer. And that's what we did. And very rewarding. I think it's also, when I think of all the people I hired to write on that show, whether it be Norm Macdonald, just a bunch of great comedians that I brought out from the Midwest, my friends, my roommates, and it's good to give someone a break if they make you look good. And I think that while the show was on, I worked on it 6 years. She could say, well, see, he's good at his job. He's good for the show. He gets it. And I think that's important. I think, because if you do stand up for somebody, there's stuff like, I'm doing this because I'm your friend, but the way I always looked at it is, I know my friend is genuinely funny, has an interesting take as a stand-up comedian. I'll teach him how to write a script. There's the form of a script. Put whatever it is you have, that magic, in this script. Write the characters as they're supposed to be, but then add something to it. And that always worked with the Roseanne show. We had some old-time Hollywood writers. Me and the other executive producer kind of split the writing staff because you needed old-timers to kind of, and then I brought in all these new guys who did an amazing job, and they went on to have their own shows and create things. So it was a good, when it lasted, the 6 years, I arguably the best 6 years of the show. All shows are like that. All shows, we have they run a course and then they start jumping the shark or whatever. I will say, she always wanted the Connors to win the lottery. I was like, God, that's not happening. That because guys don't win the lottery. That's what's great about this family. And the second I left, they won the lottery, and it made it super weird. But I'm very blessed to be out there. I worked with a lot of great people, and I think that was, that's enough. But I certainly root for her to, people don't realize the last season of the show, John Goodman wasn't even there.
Yeah.
And it got, I think the show, I was on 6 years and there were 3 more, and things, started getting a little weird. And I do think part of it is her personality, that no matter what happens, it's not quite good enough. Like, she did not get the creative by credit on the Roseanne show, which is bananas. Because obviously her show, but the Writers Guild gave it to this other guy, and she never got over that. I mean, I don't, and then she got all this acclaim for the acting, comedy, writing, all this other stuff. But then she wanted to be a director, because she wanted to show the directors that it wasn't them, it was, you know, and that went off the rails, you know. I think that God blesses you with, you know, if you're blessed to have some talent, we all have talents, but people, God doesn't usually give you everything. Like,
right.
You're a great comedian. Oh, you're a great singer. You should sing the national anthem at a baseball game. You're like I knew in that moment when she's like, they say I can sing. I was like, you can sing, but that's a hard song. Let's not do that. And you know, obviously she didn't listen to me, but you know, he sang a song. What? I don't. Who cares?
Yeah. Well, I have to ask. You know, one of the things I love about you in your career is that when you play characters that almost make the scenes and make the movies. The two movies that I'm thinking about, we've already talked a little bit about, 9 Months, and then True Lies was another one that you were involved in. Obviously, that's where you struck up your friendship with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah. But man, your characters in those movies really made the movies.
Yeah. Well, that's a good character, you know, and smart people like Roseanne. We put great actors around her. She had not acted a lot, but Laurie Metcalf is one of the best actors in America. Steppenwolf Theater. John Goodman has done so much. Estelle Parsons, that played her mom. These are great, solid actors. And then the kids were great too. But and that's what you do. You know, you go, okay, my thing is, you know, I'm not known as the best actor, but I am the glue that holds this together. And with True Lies particularly, it came out after Roseanne and I got divorced. So there was a period of time where she files for divorce and says all this stuff about me in April 1994. And everybody's like, yeah, Tom Arnold, he will never work again. He rode her coattails. He's going to be back in Iowa in 2 weeks. And I remember thinking, that's probably true. But I am going to have great stories to tell my grandkids about working on one of the best television shows ever. And I'm Arnold and Jim Cameron, like, F those people. This movie comes out July 14th. It's going to change everything. And I really wanted to believe it, but I just thought, no way. But it did. And it did because I was so good in it. And that was me being the most expensive movie ever made at the time. Such good, you know, I was super grateful. Not only was I grateful that while we were filming, I had somewhere to go that wasn't, you know, the divorce stuff, and I could, you know, travel around and do exciting things to these guys. But, you know, and Jim Cameron, to his credit, they were casting my part. I knew a lot of really good actors that come in and met about my part. And so my agent called and said, Jim Cameron wants to meet you for the part of True Lies. I go, that's bullshit. And I said, it's a mercy meeting. I know what you did. William Morris called him and said, we think Tom and Roseanne are leaving the agency. Please meet with Tom Arnold. I know you're not going to cast him, but just please. And so I almost didn't go to the meeting. And then I thought, wait a minute, I want to meet Jim Cameron. Like, this is my only chance. I'm a huge fan of this. This is my only chance to meet him. So I go over there to his office and shooting the shit. He's a very nice guy. Very cool guy. I ask him a question. Then all of a sudden he says, okay, now do the audition scene. And I was like, I got to be honest, I didn't read it. I get, yeah. He's like, what? I'm not getting the movie, so why even try? It seems less disappointing if I don't try it, I can say. And he looked at me, he's like, well, it's 3 pages. Just read it. So I read this 3 pages to him once. And then he said, hey, let's get Arnold down here. And I didn't know Arnold Schwarzenegger was upstairs. It's a loft up there the whole time I've been there. And Jim Cameron said he cast me because when Arnold was walking down the stairs, we were both watching him. And I said, I can take him. Like, I generally bet, you know. Arnold and I did the scene once. it was, you know, we had amazing chemistry. And in that movie is what our chemistry is in real life. I got that to this day. And they said, you got the part, Tom. And, but don't tell anyone for 2 weeks. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to tell anyone the best news of my life for 2 weeks. I'm going to hold it. But I went right out to my car, called everybody, been around those big phones, and nobody believes me. My own wife was like, are you back on drugs? And I remember thinking, what? And that night in front of the mirror, I look at myself like, maybe that didn't happen. Maybe I'm crazy. Why would he ask me to wait 2 weeks? Well, the reason was I didn't know. He told me after the movie came out. He had to go to Fox Studios and give them the good news. And he came in there and he said to the president, oh, we found the third guy after Jamie Lee and Arnold, and we can start filming True Lies now. They're like, that's fantastic news, Jim Cameron. Who is it? And he's like, oh, Sonny, I'm coming back. Oh God, my sons. Are we still on?
Oh yeah, we're still on.
Okay, I got to find your face. Can you see my face?
I can.
You can?
I can.
Hold on. I don't know. Son, I'm doing a podcast with the guy.
Dad, what?
I'm doing a podcast with the fella. Can I have
This is my favorite podcast ever.
On Saturday at 2 ET,
yeah,
leave me alone because there's a live event in Fortnite on December 2nd,
yeah.
Saturday, 2 p.m. ET. Because guess what? Guess who's coming?
Who?
Guess he's having his own concert.
Logan Paul. Who?
Eminem.
Oh, wow. Where does it take place?
Eminem is coming to Fortnite.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'll make sure you have that time to yourself and your dates. Someone wrote about you being a professional, too. I can't remember who. I'll get back to you on that. Please, let me finish up with this fella. I've been kind of running him around all day because of my bullshit. All right?
Okay, love you, Bob.
I love you, too. Bye. All right, are you still with me?
I am, and I got to tell you.
You're welcome to play that whole
I think I'm going to, and the reason is because nothing says dad more than that.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
I don't know how many times I've been in the middle of a depot and a bunch of phone calls from my son, and I answer, and he goes, "Hey, how's it going?" And I'm like, "Good." And he goes, "Can I buy something on Fortnite?"
Oh, you know, we have a lot of fun, you and I.
So anyway, back to True Lies though, about dropping the news.
I'm going to try to see your face. You can see my face, right?
I can see your face.
You can? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So the reason that I found out after the movie came out, because he had to go let Fox News know. By the way, True Lies is the most expensive movie ever made. He goes to in there. We can start filming the movie. Yay! We found the third guy after Arnold and Jamie Lee. Yeah, oh my God, that's great news. Who is it? It's Tom Arnold. They're like, that is horrible news, Jim Cameron. And he's like, why do you say that? Well, yeah, I mean, this guy hasn't done anything. Don't you read the tabloids? Like, he is a crazy person. And Jim Cameron, to his credit, says, no, I don't read the tabloids. But I wrote this movie, and he is the guy. And they're like, well, sorry, Jim, but we cannot approve Tom Arnold for this movie. And Jim Cameron said, no, I'm the one that's sorry. Because now I'm going to walk across the street and make it a Paramount. And they were like, whoa. Well, okay, we'll give him a chance. He'll be like on a day-to-day. But to have somebody stand up for you, you know, I mean, the Roseanne show was a huge break. Roseanne, then to have James Cameron, you know, and Arnold Schwarzenegger stand up for you. You don't need too many of those things, man. If that happens a couple times in your career, that's a, you know, those are home runs, and I'm grateful to both of them. And
that's awesome.
So
that's really awesome, and you know, what a perfect time for something like that to happen. Because I'm sure as you're going through this, confidence is a little low, you know, and something like that really changed.
Oh, but what I did is I'm like, you know. And she did a thing where she called up the heads of every network saying, if you work with him, you will never work with me. This is when she was very powerful, you know. And so I was like, well, again, I'm so blessed to come out to Hollywood and do these things. And, you know, I mean, that's the whole run. There's no, you know, it's over, but I've been just grateful. And then to have True Lies happen right after. And when True Lies test screened, that's where they put 300 people in a theater and they don't know what movie they're going to watch. All of a sudden it comes on. A James Cameron movie. People are like, oh my God. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yay. Jamie Lee Curtis. Yay. And Tom Arnold. People booed. But at the end of the movie, they fill out these cards. Who did you like the best in this movie? And it was always my character. So in that 2-hour movie, I changed the perception of being a loser and no talent to, oh, he must be a pretty good guy and he's talented. And not that that's how you should judge people in life, but that's kind of the Hollywood, you know, way. So not that I haven't screwed up, done things not great in my career since then, but once you've had those kind of things happen, when you've worked for 3 years on the kill floor of a meatpacking plant, you know, to get enough money to go to college, because that might give you an opportunity to do what you want to do, to become a comedian or whatever, and then you make it, and it's a good feeling, and it makes things easier. As I became a father later in life, like, you know, if you're a single dad and you've kind of dealt with all the nonsense that my kids and I have, you got to put yourself into it. You got to be, you know, you heard my son bossing me around, but no, you got to be kind of done with the old part of your life. Some of the other stuff, you got to be sober. You know, you got to be nice to people. You know, respectful. You have to show them, but it's the best thing. So if I could say, well, my real dream growing up was to have a family. That's really what my dream was, to have my own family, because my family was so funky. I just wanted I wanted unconditional love. And, you know, you try to get that. You say I love you unconditionally during your wedding, but that's bullshit. There are conditions, as there should be.
Right.
But the children board, you go, oh no, it's on. These unconditional love both ways. I could never complain about that. So I'm very grateful. Thank you for having me on your podcast, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate your coming on. And you know, real quick as we go out, I just want to say, like I said, you're somebody who's been a big part of my childhood growing up. You know, the Roseanne show. I love that show. I know you're a big writer on it because it reminded me a lot of my family. And so I appreciated you doing that because it's like a warm blanket for me. And so for those,
I'd say another thing too that I'm grateful. I took a lot of Ottumwa, Iowa, where I grew up, and put it on the show. You know, which is an opportunity to have. And you know, we had a little loose meat sandwich restaurant growing up, and you probably don't even know what that is. And so Roseanne worked at a loose meat sandwich place, and different people I knew from growing up. And I don't know if you do writing, but you take the people, you know, and you can always create and recreate. And my thing was, the last thing I would say, I said to people when I was still in Ottumwa, Iowa, when I was still at meatpacking plant, I feel like if I could just get on TV one time, everybody in my hometown would love me. And that's just not true. That's but you know, you got to say, this is what I want to do. And then, you know, quickly, even by my third year at the meatpacking plant, I mean, my grandpa had worked there 50 years. And I started looking around, and people were happy there. And they were happy because they had families. And I started thinking, what if I don't get out of here? You know, it is a pretty good job. And what if I have to figure out a way to be happy here? And then I realized, there's no way I could get from Ottumwa, Iowa to Hollywood. It's just not possible. I couldn't even think like how that happens. Like that's never happened. So how I must be crazy. And that weekend I went out to our little disco in Ottumwa, Iowa, and I walked out at the end of the night, and there was Andy Kaufman standing right there.
Wow.
And he was from, you know, he's from Taxi, great comedian, really interesting. And I went up to him and said, how did you get here? And he said, well, I'm studying transcendental meditation 20 miles from here in Fairfield. And there was a women's wrestling event at your Coliseum tonight. And I went to it, then I paid everybody to stay later and wrestle me because he was wrestling with it. That was his funny. And then he said, I took everybody to Happy Joe's Pizza in school buses. And Happy Joe's Pizza is the best pizza in the world. I don't know how, but I thought that's what I want. I want to be in a position where I could take everybody to Happy Joe's Pizza. And once I knew he could get there, I go, the tubes must go both ways. So it is possible for me to get there. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And anybody who's listening, subscribe. We got more exciting stuff coming up. Tom Arnold, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, buddy. You take it easy.